Greetings, Algo artisans. It is the Sunday market forecast where we cover Forex, crypto, stocks, metals, you name it. We're going to go ahead and start with data. We'll start right now. Remember, nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause and read this disclaimer. Okay, so we're looking at Forex Factory, which is a great resource not just for Forex news items. These are major items, major news events that affect all markets, stocks, metals, you name it, right? Because these are currency reports. Now, a lot of news that comes out is not really timeable, but a lot of these data that come out on this calendar, you know when they're going to come. And markets tend to have an effect around that time. And depending on how you trade, that can make a big difference. So let's go ahead and start with Monday. Not any red envelope events here. You do have a red event here on Tuesday, the 22nd at 9:25 AM EST, and that's Bank of England Governor Bailey speaks, so that can affect any trades that involve the British pound. Now, most of these events that are going to affect markets outside of Forex markets are going to be USD events, dollar events, the Fed, inflation numbers, things like that. If it's anything besides the dollar, it's mostly going to affect the Forex markets with regard to that specific currency. So in this case, anything that the British pound is involved in, whether it's the cable, the GBP USD, maybe the Beast, GBP JPY, that's all going to matter. Following day here at 9:45 AM EST, that's October the 23rd, you have the Bank of Canada monetary policy report. So that's big. It's the rate statement, their overnight rate, all that stuff comes out 9:45 AM EST. You do have the Bank of Canada press conference after that. So I would probably avoid any trades with the loonie during that time unless I was the gambling type or had the ability to make money on such trades. As anybody knows who's been watching me for some time, I do not trade with news. I wait for the news to come out, for the market to digest that news, and then to take advantage of the volatility after that. So we do have here another event, 4:30 p.m. EST, and that is Governor Bailey speaks once more. The next morning, just an hour and 15 after the European Open, you have a lot of PMI data for European countries. French, German, the major manufacturing powers in Europe talk about their purchasing manager index, I believe that is. And so that data is going to affect those countries, and the British pound comes later at 4:30 AM EST, about 2.5 hours after the European Open. And then the USD, as it is every Thursday, comes out with their unemployment claims data. Not long after that, an hour and 15 minutes later, 9:45 AM EST, comes out the US PMI. So all the purchasing managers data comes out on Thursday. And then Friday, you have some sales data coming out from Canada at 8:30 AM EST, an hour before the New York Open. So most importantly to the broader markets is going to be Thursday. You have a lot of USD data coming out. The rest of these are going to more affect the individual currencies. So let's go ahead and jump into the charts. And we'll start with the EUR USD, the most traded Forex pair out there. And those of you who know me know that I'm primarily a Forex trader. I do hold and trade a fair amount of crypto. So we're going to look at Forex, we're going to look at crypto, we're going to look at some of the stock indexes, the indices, and we're going to look at some precious metals if we have time, because that's actually a pretty key. So we're on the daily here for the euro versus the dollar. We have a very long consolidation that went all the way back really prior to January of 23. So you can see price kind of went back and forth in a bit of a range during that time. It's not the cleanest of ranges, but you can see a few key pivot points here. In more recent history, these higher pivot points on the bottom, I'd say this is the cleanest look on this range, more or less. The bottom at 106,640. The top is a little tricky on that, but what matters more is the recent highs here. So what we've had is a major move down because the dollar got very strong compared to the other currencies. And it may be that this is about to flip around. You can see here that there was a major support right here where price reversed right about there. You can see that it was on an uptrend, and on the way up, you see that it came down to here and then continued up. So that pivot point is going to be important as price approaches it, and it may already have had an effect. It might have been front run. So I marked it with this blue line, and you can see that the closer this gets to that area, the more it wants to come up. And you can see, as a matter of fact, price is moving up in the near term. So you've had a little bit of a bounce right here. Now, algorithmically, price could continue down a bit. It could go sideways and push down a bit. So I'm not convinced necessarily that price is ready to head up. It could. It very well could. We have to see how it plays out. Price is kind of in that delicate time where it doesn't know which way it wants to go, and it may very well create a range over the next week or two or less in this area, roughly like this. We're going to see what happens, and if that range action continues to happen, then of course scalping is the way to go if you are a day trader. And if you're a swing trader, you just have to look for your opportunities. I would wait for a range to develop and take advantage of that. In the meantime, we can take a look at the algos. Higher time frame, it's still pretty bearish. So I do think we're going to see price head down a little bit, but on the swing trading time frames, we can see going back to Thursday, it has done nothing but go up. So we can rely on some of these lower time frame indicators that price may continue up. I calculate that based on this most recent impulse down, we may see price head back up and go not much higher than this and probably not quite as high. If I were to use a Fibonacci tool, we can have an idea of where the 1.618 is, and that does line up with some structure here as well, and price may head up to that 1.618 level. As a matter of fact, we could take our fixed range profile, take it along that same impulse, and you can see that the most likely area for price to go is going to be the point of control, which is right here below the 618. There is some more attraction above the 618, but it does seem that that's where price is going to go. So either one of these places might be a nice target for the high, and as price heads up and the algos give us clues, we'll be able to have an idea of what goes on there. Now on a lower time frame, for those of us day trading, I'm thinking that price is going to continue to head up. It is now at a bit of a resistance, right? We have this top right here, but I get the feeling that top might get crushed, and price may encounter a hair of resistance there. It might take a day or two to pop above, depending on the volatility of the market and so forth, but it could just break right through, considering how long it's been going down, and you might just continue to get this sideways to up motion. It might take longer, it might happen shorter, but I do think this 109.016 is going to be a place where, say, between these two blue lines, we're start to see price slow down a little bit, maybe develop a range, maybe not. We're going to see it as it happens, and the algos are going to give us some clues. So the British pound versus the dollar, very similar look, but it's a little more rangy here. You can see that this range is relatively clear, going back to this fake out, breakout, and move down. This is obviously a news event push down, and price is now back in this relative range here. Again, it's not the cleanest range, but it's there. So price may continue to range until it makes a decision. I'm not adverse, depending on the algos, to possibly looking into, and I'd have to wait for the market to open, but the trade I take might look something like this. Because of this prior range gives me a little confidence, and as long as the algos agree and the market open is not too crazy and violent and price does pull back to give me a long, I may take a move like this, a trade like this. Just right within that range, very clear established range going back to last week, and see if that opportunity is there, but that's going to have to play out as it does, and of course the algos are going to have to give me an okay. On a higher time frame, we'll start there. It's usually where I start anyway. It's going to look similar to the euro versus the dollar in that it's gone down for quite a ways. It does have a head start on heading up. So if we're going to use the same metrics as to where it might go and stop going, we can put our fib on, put our fixed range on that fib, and we can see most of the price action is actually below the 382. Now, it might not matter if the rest of the market wants to push in a given direction. If the dollar gets weaker, this kind of volume might not matter quite so much. Price is going to have a little bit of a hard time from a volumetric standpoint getting past the 382 and to the 618 because there's very little volume happening right here. Now that might be saved because there's a lot of volume that happened before that, so that might be kind of a non-problem, but I would look for at least a possible trade up to this 382, right? So I can mark this 382 out, go on a lower time frame, beware of the recent structure that might get in the way, and see if there's an opportunity to trade that on a lower time frame. So here we are in the lower time frame. This is the 30-minute. So this would rely on a bit more of a breakout, and again, there's this structure here that might be getting in the way, but that 382 is up here, and at this point I could technically take this current trade if the open is not too violent. Again, this trade that I took at the bottom of this range, that whole trade. Now I could have a second trade with a deeper stop loss based on using some of this other structure as protection, and then have my target be up at this 382. These would be a second higher time frame, totally separate trade based on separate metrics, and I could run them both at the same time. And then as price approached this structure level, I could either take some profit off, or I could simply take some risk off, meaning put the stop loss at entry, and then pay attention to how price is behaving in the algos and see if I need to change what's going on in the trade. I do have algorithmic exits, so if my algos tell me to get out of a trade, I can do that. That's an option. Therefore, they are part of my plan. I'm not willy-nilly just getting in and out of trades. Quick look at the USD JPY. Didn't see a lot of JPY news this week. I'm going to go to the higher time frame. Now, JPY has been rather bullish, and the big question is whether or not it can continue up, because what I'm seeing here is a move up and then a drop off in momentum, right? Strong move, and then now you're starting to see it slow down, and a lot of times in many markets, price will then head down to grab some more liquidity, and that very well could happen, especially because it's right at this old resistance going back to right here, and that might be the beginning of some kind of a head and shoulders. We'll have to see what happens on that. Algorithmically, It's pretty bullish, but it is bullish up against resistance, hence the slowdown that we were just talking about. On the weekly, though, it's rather bullish altogether. Now, on the swing trading timeframes, we are seeing a bit of some bearishness, right? Price pulling back. And when you have like bullish against resistance scenario, what you start to see are ranges. So price may simply do, like I said earlier, head back down and grab some liquidity right about here. Very, very possible, or even here. Or it could develop a range up here. It could come down, develop the range right there. You know, those things can all happen, right? So I would take a close look at that as it unfolded. I would use the higher time frame bias to make some trades. And if there was no clear bias, I would look for ranges and I would simply trade the range. So USD/JPY needs a little bit of reset. It's just pretty crazy, pretty irrational, and we're going to see what it does as it does. Let's move on to the cryptocurrencies. Now we do have Bitcoin looking very strong. It's made a move all the way up to 69,000. And if we look at the higher time frame, we can take a look at the entire pattern that we've been talking about for quite some time. Now I did make a warning last week that I do think it's possible that Bitcoin is ready to break out. And if you look at last week's video, you can see where I am bullish, where I'm kind of slightly bullish, and where I'm a lot more bullish. To keep it really simple, above this most recent high here at 70,100 or so, when it breaks that, I will be more bullish. I'm slightly bullish now. I'll be a little bit more bullish after that. As it breaks 72,000, I become a little bit more bullish. And as it breaks the all-time high, I'm like, okay, that's pretty much it. Now, thing is that as this happens, the algos are also telling me that they're getting bullish. There's some key items in the algorithms that say, okay, now might be the time to take off. But still, I need to see how today's candle prints, right? This is the weekly chart. And on the weekly chart, this candle prints in about 6 hours. Now, I'm pretty sure it's going to stay up here, but it might get crammed down and it might really, really mess everything up on the metrics. Mind you, after the close, they might want to paint a certain kind of a candle that looks a certain way and then crush it down afterwards. I know that sounds crazy, but that's just the way finance is. So we might have to take a look at an hour or two after the close to have some better idea what's going on. Either way, as price breaks these levels, I get a little bit more bullish and my metrics will continue to get more bullish if that happens in short order, right? If it comes back down and does a few other things, that all can change. But that's the basics of Bitcoin, and I don't really see any need to get too much farther into it. I do think that price is going to make a run at 70,100. I think it will do that. It's starting to show that little bit of slowdown like I was showing you on the USD/JPY, but Bitcoin is a little bit different. Historically, when you see what is basically a vertical accumulation with higher highs and higher lows, in this sense, even after a strong move, it tends to break up after that. You usually don't see a slowdown until you start to see lower highs. You have to know each asset class and how it behaves. So in this case, most likely we're going to see a push up to like 70,100, maybe a little bit higher, and that may be one of two things: to either take out all the shorts being put on right here, or to just continue up. It might be time. We're at the end of October, which is usually a green month, certainly a green month this month. So let's go ahead and move over to Ethereum, and Ethereum has popped up as well. Now compared to Bitcoin, it is still underperforming, but it is right up against this resistance at 2727. The metrics, just like with Bitcoin, are bullish, so all I can really do is kind of look to see if it breaks that or if it rejects. And that's really where we're at with most of these cryptos. At resistance, will it break? Will it reject? Bitcoin is going to tell us what it's going to do. Last crypto we'll look at today is going to be Solana. Exact same scenario. Solana has outperformed all of the other cryptos in this market, going back really to the beginning of the year. All the major cryptos. There's a lot of cryptos that have outperformed it, don't get me wrong, but in the quote-unquote blue chip types, right, the big dog, top 10, top 20 types, Solana has done pretty well, especially compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So this is a major resistance it is coming up against, and if it breaks above 162, that probably means Bitcoin has broken its 70,000 number, and if Solana can break 193, there's a good chance that Bitcoin has broken its all-time high. So Bitcoin really is going to control the game on these, but this has been great to be long. That's most of crypto right now. The last week or so it's been like that. Let's move on over to the indices. We got some all-time highs last week, and not much has changed since the last time I looked at this on the live show on Friday, and I do this every morning, although in the morning time not quite as much time to show everybody everything. But in this case, we are looking at a bullish breakout, and if price can break above 5,900 convincingly and stay above for at least a couple of days, good chance it's going to make a run at 5,980. Now, a lot of people were sort of scoffing when I said we might see 6,000 by the end of the year. However, we're now at 5,900, so 6,000 is extremely possible, especially depending on how the election goes. Most markets go sideways into elections. This one has been sideways to bullish, and so it is pretty much on brand. Let's take a look at MYM1, which is the Dow Jones futures. appears even more bullish than the SP 500. Similar look, just more bullish, and using a high time frame Fibonacci tool going from 40,000 up to about 43,000, my targets are going to be 43.8 and 44.9, right? Those are my next targets on the Dow, and I think it will go there in short order, maybe the next like month and a half, if not sooner. NASDAQ has been trailing a little bit behind, but if you'll notice, it does have the strong look like it's going to break above this range, right? So I do think NASDAQ is getting ready to break out, as are I think the rest of the indices, and we'll see if it can sort of gather steam again. It outperformed everything for a long time, so it is probably just taking a break, gathering some steam. Eventually I think it will come back and possibly outperform because of the way tech is in the US market, and my target top side for that is 21,634. Closest target is this all-time high sitting at about 20,800. I would be careful around that though. I'm not sure if it has the gas to get above that. So good, decent trade. Might be looking to enter at a breakout, and I would probably take profit around 20,800, maybe a little below that, 20,708, right? That's a decent trade on that. Last, we'll look at gold and silver. V the Grill and I called gold possibly above 3,000 by the end of the year. Kind of thought that maybe 2025 was a little more realistic on 3,000, but we had been calling 3,000 going back to like 2018. We talked about this for a long time, and throughout Algo Factory's inception, we had this high time frame pattern going back to 2020 or so, where gold had just gone back and forth, and had done so for a long time. And when you see a consolidation that goes years and years, then there's a really good chance that upon breakout, that will be very powerful. So we have this range that took place going back to July of 2020, and then this breakout is going to be commensurate with the length of that range. And I think 3,000 is not that far away, and gold just continues to go up as international instability mounts. Silver, in a very similar vein, has been not quite as strong as gold, but it tends to be more volatile. So if there is a true breakout like there was after the 2008 crisis, I could see silver making its way probably to $50 pretty quickly. The prior high was around there. So for the moment though, if I were to get some more localized targets, I would be looking at $35 and $41. Just understand though that silver could get slammed down. It usually gets slammed down Sundays and Mondays, and it might be that a lot of people in the very big high finance world start to go bankrupt when silver goes above 32 and stays there for more than a week. So if silver stays above 32 for more than a week, I would start to look out for some very high silver prices. Very exciting. All right, well, thanks for watching. We do this once a week, every week on Sunday. You can also come over to algofactory.tech. We teach people how to trade, teach you how to build trading algorithms. You don't have to know how to write a single line of code. An algorithm is just simply a way to trade, right? Even your old school traders who don't use very much computer tech or anything like that, they all use algos, and we just help you to build it and use it successfully. Algofactory.tech. We'll see you over there, and come join our live shows. They're every day. You can watch them after the fact if you like. Come join us live, 8:30 AM EST on YouTube, X, Rumble, etc. Catch you on the flip side.